In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove and replace your AC condenser on a Nissan Frontier, located in the front bumper area in front of the radiator and the front grille. Before replacing any AC parts, make sure you get your AC system professionally evacuated by an evac machine. Locate your battery on the passenger side front of the engine compartment, and you have your negative terminal, positive. We're going to take the negative cable off with a 10mm wrench or socket. Loosen it up just enough to get that terminal end off, and I like to tuck it somewhere underneath there so it doesn't come up and ground itself out. So to do that AC pressure switch, it's located right here next to the battery. You have the high side line, follow it down where it goes into the condenser, and there's your switch right here. There's a little harness connector, and it screws right into the AC condenser. So to remove it, we're going to take our connector and disconnect it. There's a little tab you're going to push down with your thumb and pull on that electrical connector. Pull it right off. Now the sensor itself is a 24mm. You can use a wrench, but the socket would have to be hollow enough to let that sensor go through it. I'm using a chrome deep socket because the actual sensor will fit inside there. You want to make sure that's not a stopping point. So you can take it's a 1/2-inch drive. It's also a 15/16 socket or 24mm. Set it right on there. I'm going to go counterclockwise. It's not on there too tight, just enough to break it free. And we can take it right out. Even though the system is evacuated, you hear a little vacuum, which is normal. Remove the airbox hose and lid to access the area. So we're going to disconnect the mass airflow sensor connector. Squeeze that tab and lift up. And then you're going to have to take this tab out of the way because you want to take that harness out of the airbox. Just take a pair of pliers or something and squeeze those little plastic ears and pull that harness right through. Undo the two tabs that hold the air lid to the bottom box. You can actually, if you want to, pull that right up like that. Now we're going to follow the air tube right over to that throttle body, and you have two clamps holding that down, 8mm or a flathead screwdriver. Loosen them up. So now we're going to take this PC hose right off, PCV, pair of pliers, grab the clamp, push that clamp away. You can use the same pliers to just kind of wiggle that hose. Disconnect it. Now we have two screws up here taking this cover so we can access the other ones. 10mm socket, take that engine cover off. Take those two screws out and just lift it up. There's two rubber bushings holding it down after you take the bolts out. You have two more bolts right here holding this air tube down to that bracket, 10mm socket. Now we can just grab that and wiggle it right off the throttle body. Now we can take the airbox, spin it up, and you'll see the little vent tube right here with a nice little clip on there. Squeeze that, push that through, take that right out. Set that aside. Now we can take that whole air cover right out of the way. You're going to remove the grill piece, and that's 6 clips on the top here, and there'll be 6 tabs on the inner edge. Pull up all the tabs. Now when you bring the grill forward like this, you'll see in here there's 3 long tabs. And you're just going to push down on the tab with your finger from underneath, push up, and then go to the next one, do the same all the way across. Get the grill right out of the way. I have to remove these 2 top radiator support brackets, 10mm socket. Lift those brackets up, get them out of the way. When doing this job, you don't need to drain the whole radiator. Just put a bucket underneath and catch some residual coolant that's going to come out of the upper hose when it comes off. So just with a pair of pliers, I'm going to squeeze that clamp. I'm going to take it off the engine too, just to make it that much easier for me. So this actually is a heater hose removal tool. So it shouldn't stab the hose. It gets underneath the tube and it just breaks the connection where it is. Like that. There we go. And just remove that upper hose. Now we're going to remove the overflow tank hose to the radiator. Pair of pliers, just squeeze that clamp. Get that out of the way. Now we can follow it from the shroud. Disconnect it over. Bring that right over there. We're going to disconnect the high side line that goes to the AC condenser, 10mm socket or wrench, and just break that free. Just going to grab that and just wiggle it. Let that come right out of the condenser. Now we're going to go across and take the 3 bolts here connecting the shroud to the radiator, 10mm socket. Now we have some clearness there. And now I'm going to take the low side down. So now we'll get the low side line on the AC condenser, 12mm socket or wrench, and I'm going to take the mounting bolt off of that. So when you have oxidization like this, just grab a flat screwdriver, give it a little helping hand. Now with a 10mm ratcheting wrench, we're going to just break this bolt free from the condenser to the radiator. There's one on both sides, driver's side and passenger side. Now go over to the passenger side. To access that steel cover, we have to take this lower bumper cover off. It's just a little strip that's hiding the bolts that mount that shield to the front bumper. 10mm socket. I'm going to go across and take all the bolts out. There's 6 total. Now with this pulled down, we see 4 screws that have a Phillips head on them. So the steel shield has 4 mounting bolts. The 2 here on this cross member don't come all the way down. You just take a 10mm socket and loosen them, because the shield has a fork groove in it, so when I take the 2 up by the bumper down, it won't fall down. So now I can support this and take these 2 down the rest of the way. And I did manage to get this down. So now we have the condenser separated from the radiator. We're just going to take this factory foam right out of here. I'm going to set it aside and see if we can reuse it. Now we can grab that condenser. I'm going to break it free from the 2 prongs that are located down below and just see if we can guide it up, clear of the lines, watching the AC condenser that's attached to it. And then pull that condenser right up. So before installing our new condenser, we're going to transfer over the little rubber bushings. You're going to go right on those bottom pins. Slide them right over. It just gives a damper between where it mounts. And you have one on the other side, same spot. Transfer that over. Now to reinstall the condenser, slide it right in. And you'll see the little brackets on the bottom that those round bushings sit in. You have one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. So now we can mount it to the radiator. Take your bolt right through, line up the bolt hole, and start it by hand. I'm going to get a 10mm ratchet wrench and really seat that. I'm going to have to work it while you just thread it in. Perfect. Now I'm going to go to the passenger side and start it over there. Nice. Start it by hand and then tighten it up. Just tighten it and then give it a nice little quarter turn. Finalizing the driver's side, we're going to snug it up. Now we can pull it back in. Let's make sure the radiator itself is in the bracket. Like that. Now we can get our top mounts. We can mount this radiator to the upper radiator support. So now we have our upper radiator support brackets. Slide them right over that little plastic nub. Start our bolts by hand. Move over to the passenger side. We're going to do the same there. Line that bolt hole up. Then I'll get a 10mm socket and I'm going to tighten those down. So now before we install our AC lines into our condenser, I'm going to take a little small screwdriver. I'm going to pop off this O-ring because we're going to replace it. You don't want to ever use the old one. And I want to clean up this aluminum line where it meets because it's got a lot of oxidization on it. There we go. And O-rings for AC are a certain type. They're not oil resistant, it's the Freon oil type, so you have to get specific AC O-rings. Now with a brass or wire brush, a little handheld one, you want to get all that oxidization off where that O-ring sits and where it meets the condenser. I'm just covering the hose, make sure I get no debris down in there. Definitely don't want to spray any chemicals. As you can see how that little white stuff right there, that's just aluminum meeting moisture, causes this oxidization, and we want to get rid of that. So sometimes a little pick or a flathead screwdriver, you just want to get in there and chip it away without damaging the hose, or just replace the hose. But if you put this back together with that in there, you're probably more than likely, definitely going to have an AC leak. And that's kind of counterintuitive to what we're doing. So just take your time and make sure you get it all clean. I'm going to go check the other side. So I like to take a cap off the PAG oil for the AC and just put a couple of drops in there. It's got to be specific PAG oil because you don't want to use any type of oil. Then I'm going to take my new O-ring and I'm going to drop it in that cover, and I'm just going to flop it around so that it gets all nice and covered. Keeps it stretchable and buoyant. And now I'm going to slide it on. Fit it right into that groove. Slide it right down. Take any excess oil, spin it around. We'll line it up to that condenser and push it right on. Just like that. So now I'm going to take the mounting bolt. Now on this particular vehicle you had a low side line and a high side line going into the condenser. Two mounting bolts. I noticed one was an 8mm by 125. That's this one. That's the low side, the thicker of the hose. And the high side line has a 6mm bolt on it. And you can't really confuse them because one won't fit into the other. So with a 12mm wrench or socket, I like to use a wrench when it comes to things like this because it's really all by feel of hand. There is no torque specs for this bolt. So I'm just going to snug it. Right there is pretty much done. And I'm going to give it a quick little 1/8 of a turn. So now we're on the high side line, passenger side. I put oil on my new O-ring. Line it up to the condenser. Let it sit right in. Now I have the mounting bolt. When you see a bolt with all of this material in it, it's just corrosion. You want to take a wire wheel or a brush to that before you install it. So now we've cleaned the threads up on that bolt. We're just going to line it up, start it. This one's kind of difficult to get to because of the line, the way they angle it. So you'd be here a little bit, long time with a wrench. So I'm going to be using a socket on this side. It's going to be a 10mm socket and a ratchet wrench. 1/4 inch drive. So same procedure as the other side. Let it bottom out. Right there is pretty much bottom out. I'm going to give it a good 1/8 of a turn. So now we can put our upper shroud together to our radiator. There's 3 mounting bolts, or holes, shall I say, 1, 2, and 3. And they're plastic type screws with a 10mm socket head. They're self-tapping screws. Get that one started. This one in. $10mm socket. I'm going to drive them right in. Now we can take our electric fan harness and reconnect it. You'll see those little plastic ears snapping back into place. That goes over there. That one goes there. Put the connector in until it clicks. It was a silent click. That goes to the high pressure switch, which is not in right now. Now we're going to put our upper hose back on. Put the engine side on first, then attach it to the radiator. Make sure it is all the way on, right to that stopping point. We'll take our expansion clamps, get a pair of pliers. You always want to line them up with the old groove if you're reusing the old hose. Now we can put on our radiator overflow hose, run it under the upper hose, put it right in that little shroud connector. There's two of them. Hook it up to your radiator. Get your pliers. Put the clamp on. So before we install our new high pressure switch, we're going to take this package boot off, and it comes with a new O-ring. So we're going to just take some clean PAG oil and coat that O-ring. And now we can reinstall this. Of course, tighten it up by hand, snug it down. .24mm socket or 15/16, and it literally is a snug. Once it bottoms out, little snug turn, we can take our connector and reconnect it until it clicks. So now we can grab our metal shield, slide it up top of that plastic. And we have those two bolts down here. I'm just going to stop by hand so I can let go and let it rest on them. Now we're going to connect the shield to the steel front bumper, the bottom half. There's just two bolts that hold this in, 10mm socket. Never tighten anything up 100% till they're all in. As you can see, I sprayed the holes a little bit so I could get that to stay nice and loose. Now I'm just going to snug all four up. So you have these little 4 tabs that connect to that shield, and that was a Phillips head screw. I'm going to put all 4 in. We're missing that last screw right there. We can now put our bumper valance up, and it has 2 tabs right here. One there on the driver's side, and then one on the passenger side. Looks just like that. And they go right into those little key slots. So slide it up in there, bring it over, do the passenger side too. Now you can bring it forward, and it should clip right into place. Now these are 6mm threaded bolts. Set it by hand and work your way across. Snug them up. It's a 10mm socket. Now we're going to put our air box back in, and you'll see the 3 tabs right here, 1, 2, and 3, and the 3 tabs are on the air cover. I'm going to slide those right in. Let them fall into place. You'll know they're in place because of the way the seat, it'll seat up here. You won't be able to get those clamps on. Just like that. Remount that vent hose on that little tab. Let it push down in. So while you're putting the throttle body hose on, the air hose, make sure you lift it up enough to get these 2 mounting screws cleared. And then push. And there we go. You'll feel them fall right into place. Now we can grab that breather hose, put that right on, and our mass airflow sensor connector. Don't forget the mounting clip. All right, let's get a pair of pliers, 10mm socket. Pair of pliers, I'm going to put the clamp back on that breather hose, lining it up to where it used to sit. 10mm socket, I'm going to snug down on the mounting bracket. 2 screws. And then over here, we're going to tighten up our hose on the throttle body, and that's an 8mm socket or flathead screwdriver. Making sure it's nice and snug. Tighten up on those clamps. Now we can put the engine cover on. Make sure you put the rubber bushings on top of the mounting studs and push down on it. Just like that. The push. And then you have the 2 mounting bolts. That's a 10mm socket. You're going to line up the 6 tabs that are on the slots on the bottom. Across the bottom, you've got 3 per side. Line them right up with the bumper cover that has the slots in them. You're going to have to tilt the grill cover just to line right up, and then you're going to push it in until it clicks. And then you have 6 plastic push pins on the top. Sometimes when they're new, they're kind of tough to put on. So you got 3 on each side of the grill. To reattach your negative cable, slide it down over, make sure it is all the way down. 10mm wrench. Once you feel it bottom out, grab the cable and pull up on it so that you're not putting any pressure on that lead stud. Make sure it's not loose. And if you lose any coolant, don't forget to top it off and then recheck it once it cools down. Now with all the AC repairs done, you can go back to the garage that you got your AC recovered from and have them vacuum and charge your system properly. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.